What's going on, guys? Waco from Revolution Arabia, and so I guess I should say Salam alaikum Habibis.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you for joining me. I have with me two of my favorite people in the watch industry, Mr. Nicolas Roudez, the head of Franck Muller Watchland, and of course, Mr. Jean-Luc Anat, who is the creative director of Franck Muller Watchland. How are you, gentlemen?
Very well, and great to see you again.
Thank you.
And guys, what a beautiful sunny day we have here. The first one we've had really for Geneva in this
Absolutely,
summer.
it's one of the first summer days, and what a great event it is, because we are actually doing our Geneva Supercar Show at the same time here in our property at the Grand Malany in Gentot, just next to the factory.
So we'll show you some B-roll of this, of course, but there's some really extraordinary cars that are around the area. And I love this sort of alignment between supercars and watches as well.
Mechanism at a different scale for watches and cars, but all pretty much the same objective.
So the watch that we're launching today is honestly one of my favorite Franck Mullers of all time, right? This model dates back to the early 90s, and it is an example of the incredible mechanical creativity of Franck Muller, really the master of complications.
Absolutely, it was a wonderful creation with the double face and rattrapante.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the round shape was the first shape of Franck Muller for sure, Frank, in the beginning.
So there's history that is exuding off of this watch. It's one of the first Franck Muller case shapes, which is the round one, yes?
Just before the Curvex shape, of course. But
The legendary Sintré Curvex, right?
Of course, yes.
And as you were saying, Nicolas, it's a really special complication. So the thing is, a chronograph normally has a seconds hand and a second series of counters on the front of the dial. But this watch does one better. It actually has three scales on the back of the watch as well.
Correct.
So it's a double-sided watch or double-faced watch. And so you see, when you look at it, you see, of course, the large sweep seconds hand for the chronograph, the continuous seconds scale, the minute counter, and the hour scale as well. In addition to that, there is a tachymeter on the front.
Absolutely, and because it's a limited edition for the Middle East, we have Indian numbers everywhere on the watch.
So this is also something that is quite extraordinary, because I know you worked very hard on this. To my mind, I think this is the very first chronograph with all of the scales expressed in Eastern Arabian indexes. Am I correct, sir?
Absolutely, which makes this watch even more special.
Yes. And Jean-Luc, how difficult was it to find exactly the right scales for everything, to translate everything accurately?
of course, it's difficult also to put in Indian numbers for us. We have to make some research to be sure that we are right. But also, because it's the same hands on the face and on the back, we have to think to read in reverse. So we have to think about that, about the scales.
So not only did you have to translate it accurately, you also had to make sure that you reversed the order on the back as well, so everything is perfectly accurate. So this is the unique thing about this watch, and the thing that I love so much. You start the chronograph, and you see this, huge, polished sweep seconds hand start to march imperiously around the perimeter of the dial, which has a tachymeter here. But then as you turn it over, you've got a second large sweep seconds hand, and here you have three scales. So easy to read because they occupy the entire real estate of the back of the watch. You have in the center of a watch a telemeter, then you have a tachymeter, and then on top of that you have a pulsometer, right? So we'll start from the exterior. A pulsometer is a scale that allows you to, as the name would imply, take the pulse in just a few heartbeats.
Correct.
Right? The tachymeter gives you the average speed over a certain distance. It can be either kilometers or miles. I believe you guys have done kilometers, right? That's where in Europe that makes sense.
And Middle East as well.
And a telemeter is a super interesting scale that allows you to gauge the distance to, like, for example, when a lightning bolt strikes. So as soon as you see that first, you start your telemeter, and then when you hear the sound, because there's a difference in between, you stop your telemeter and it will tell you the distance from where you are to where the lightning bolt struck. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And if it gets increasingly close to you, you should probably depart your current location.
For sure.
But Jean-Luc, that's not all, because this watch also has a rattrapante as well, a split second function on the front of the watch. Tell me about that.
Yeah, of course, what is interesting in this movement is that to make the highlight of the second hand and the rattrapante in the middle. So we have the hour and minute at 6, and all the concentration in the middle with the second hand and the rattrapante. Of course, you can use the function of the rattrapante, so you can measure 2 interval times. So it's very interesting function.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I love the design concept of moving the time telling to 6 o'clock, where now all of your attention goes to the center of the watch, where you're looking at the chronograph seconds hand. And then when you press the split button, as I just have, you see that these two hands split apart, and this allows you to measure an elapsed time, you know? So that, for example, if you're timing a car and it makes one lap, you can press it, you can record the lap time, then you can press it again, and these two hands sort of magically catch up.
It's a fantastic function, absolutely.
It's incredible. But the thing that's so cool about this is that it's attached to a chronograph that passes on a pinion all the way through the watch to a second like scale on the back of the watch. And that is just incredible. It just shows you the imagination of Frank Muller. I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, listen, the imagination of Frank Muller has always been endless from the very beginning, from the complications to the designs. And this is just a continuity of our wonderful creations. And we're delighted to be presenting this limited edition in 20 pieces for the Middle East, thanks to our collaboration together. And already people are calling me asking for the Panda watch.
So let's talk about the design. So, you know, Jean-Luc, I know that you and Nicolas had a couple of designs in mind, but when we looked at the options, we finally arrived on this Panda dial. And I have to say, it's absolutely stunning. It's so pure. I love the Grenet effect on the cream part of the dial.
Because our first collaboration with this watch was very classical black and touch of white. It makes sense to make the Panda in second time. So I think it's a really beautiful couple.
It is, I mean, honestly, and I love the first watch, but this is one of the sexiest watches I've seen in a really long time. Also, the size is fantastic, 39 mm in terms of diameter. It's a little bit thicker than a normal watch because it has two faces,
Absolutely.
you know. But it's definitely slimmer than like a Skymoon Tourbillon, for example. And also, what I love the fact that the watch is also automatic as well, so you can keep all of the chronographs functioning well, and you never have to really worry about the power reserve as long as you keep it on your wrist. Correct?
It's a very elegant watch and sporty at the same time, and wearable for all occasions.
Now let's talk about one last touch, one last little surprise for the owners.
Your very good idea was to make the back very special. I'll let you explain this.
What they have done is they've taken the back dial of the watch and they've applied a maximum of superluminova to the scales, which means that technically you could even read the tachymeter, telemeter, and telemeter in the dark, which I love.
Well, this was your creation and your idea, so thank you for
the good idea is to make a face very classical and a back very modern.
I love that idea, and I think that that's what's so cool about this watch and what's so cool about Frank Muller. You know, you're rooted in a wonderful history. You guys were really the first, master of complications, as the name says, in the late 80s, the 90s. Absolutely. And you know, that's one thing that I would love to discuss with the two of you. It seems that Gen Z, the younger generation, the guys in their 20s, have all become kind of renewed in their fascination for Frank Muller. What's going on?
Well, I think there's two different aspects. I think the first is the fact that the older generation, the parents, have also worn Frank Muller from the beginning, from the 90s, and they've passed this passion for Frank Muller to their children. And also the fact that we at Frank Muller, with our different distributors, have come up with ideas, and we've touched a younger clientele with watches like the FR2 collaboration or the Beach collaboration. And the objective of these watches was mainly to attract a younger generation, and I feel this is working.
I love it, you know, and it kind of reminds me, you know, since we're amid the sort of car world here, of like a really cool retro modern car like a Singer Porsche, right? Where you have the iconography of one of the most classic shapes of all time, but you've got like a little twist of new technology as well. And I love this watch. I love the functionality, the double-sided, the rattrapant, the fact that it's all Eastern Arabian indexes, and then the SLN for the back also. Gentlemen, you crushed it.
Well, thanks to your collaboration, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much, Wei.
Pleasure, sir. Jean-Luc, you're a very talented man and you're extremely handsome. Nicolas, I don't need to say, I consider you to be ravishing. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us, and I hope you like this watch as much as we love creating it. Thank you for your time.